Good morning. Today in the Bangalore Ithi studio, we have Ganesh Devi. He is one of the foremost intellectuals of India, best known for building the institution called People's Linguistic Survey of India, as well as the Adivasi Academy. Dr. Devi was awarded the Padma Shri in 2014. So, sir, it is a privilege for us to have you in the Bangalore Ithi studio.
Thank you for asking me to be here.
So my first question for you, sir, is most of the individuals interviewed on this channel so far have been rationalists, people who identify as rationalists. So how would you define a rationalist in your own words, and do you count yourself as one?
Well, going by the strict sense of the term rationalist, my answer is there is no human who has a mind and has the confidence of the ability of the mind to perceive the outside world is a rationalist. I say so because when the term emerged and got into circulation about 400 years ago, it was used in order to describe a certain worldview. The worldview was that people who try to figure out a reason for existence by using their own intellect, by using their own minds, without allowing all credit for existence to go to God or some mysterious power. Such people were using rationality. Now, towards the middle of the 19th century, the idea of God was challenged altogether. In Karl Marx's Sociology and Economics, and in philosophies, German philosophies, which started speaking of the death of God. There was a context for that debate outside Marxism, and that context was Darwin's theory of evolution. Darwin had proposed that the species have evolved in a slow succession and replacement or displacement of species. That view was opposed not just by the church, but by some scientists also. All of this I'm saying because very often I have worked with rationalists in my social life, and I belong to their side. I do not like superstition, blind superstition. But it is necessary to understand what is the nature of superstition, what it conceals or contains, and what rationalism really is. To my mind, rationalism is the human ability to decide in the set of given presumptions to choose the one that is less superstitious and more scientific. One who does that is a rationalist. I'm saying this in order to introduce a word of caution, because what we think is scientific today may not be seen as being scientific 100 years from now. But the ability of the human mind to choose between different presumptions or assumptions is a capacity of the mind which will continue with the Homo sapiens for all time to come, because that is how the brain is structured. Your question was, are you a rationalist? Now, I have explained all these positions to you in order to say that I am aware of these philosophical debates, and therefore it would be most irrational on my part to say, yes, I am a rationalist, or no, I'm not a rationalist.
That's a very good historical background, Dr. Devi. Your name is among the list of illustrious writers who, during 2015, returned their Sahitya Akademi Awards in protest against growing intolerance. So, since that time, has the government made any progress or taken any action to address the issues behind the so-called award vapasi?
Award that I written was given to me by the Sahitya Academy, not by the government. Sahitya Academy is not a part of the government. Sahitya Academy was created as a body of writers to be run by writers in 1960s. This body is headed by a writer. Its secretary, executive secretary, is also a writer, not an IAS officer. Its members of the executive board are writers. They are elected by writers. So here are writers running an organization for literature. And that organization gives awards to writers. The government doesn't come in the picture except for providing funding from public funds, not from any party's funds. An award was given to me in 1993 for my book, which was published in 1992. And I felt very proud, very happy in getting that award. I was a young man, and it was my very first book published. So I felt very nice about the award. It was a great honor. And I have also been a part of the executive, various committees of the Sahitya Academy. Now, it so happened that in the year 2015, Dr. M.M. Kalburgi was killed. So at that time, many writers returned their awards to the Sahitya Academy, not to the government. These awards were written because the Sahitya Academy had not uttered even a word of condolence or empathy for the family of empathy for the family of Dr. Kalburgi or condolence for Dr. Kalburgi's death. He was killed in the month of August, 30th August 2015. He was killed. So I waited for about a month or so, and to see if Sahitya Academy would send a letter to the widow, but it did not happen. I had seen him just a little before this happened. I had gone to Dharwad for a lecture, and I knew that he had written more than 100 books about medieval Karnataka culture and religion. Now, please, I should add this. Dr. Kalburgi's interpretation of Lingayat faith was a very astute, very deep, very learned analysis of religion. He had brought out the true core of the spirituality of Basveshwar in his writings. But because he was talking about the true core, people who had formed mathas for whom around that faith, for whom it was a vested interest, did not like his writings. So we concluded that he was killed because of his ideas. So his questioning, his thinking were punished, assaulted, and that made us very uncomfortable. We expected that Sahitya Academy, which has all along encouraged questioning, free thought, expression, creative expression, was silent on this question. Therefore, we returned the awards. In the media, in television, and in some newspapers, but mainly on the TV channels, this entire episode was depicted as a political act, which it was not. Writers are by and large, truly, I mean, any writer worth his salt is indifferent to governments. It is because of that writers can ask hard questions to governments and political parties.
So, coming to a different issue, I grew up studying the NCERT textbooks coming from CBSE school. And now it seems that the history textbooks of the NCERT are being rewritten. It's being rewritten with a strong bias where ideology is being substituted for evidence-based history. So, in your opinion, will the next generation of India's school kids emerge with a factually inaccurate and biased understanding of India's
Yes,
history.
yes, I think so. I very much think so. History, the word history has two meanings. One meaning is history as the past. All that happened in the past is history. The second meaning is a narrative of that past, to a representation of that past within a certain format. The narrative about the past is always done in the present by people who are around us, people who are now and here. Because history as an account of the past is a representation. It's a kind of a making it compact, reducing it, eliminating many things, suppressing some things, highlighting some others. It is a narrative which will always have a bias. And any bias, any orientation, necessarily has a political side. So if somebody tried to say that a certain given book of history is completely free of ideology, it is impossible. But some ideologies will not force an account of history into twisting facts. There may be a tendencies presentation, that is, the orientation of the history writer will certainly appear there. But if the ideology itself is founded on a view of history which is inaccurate, which is unscientific, an impact of such an ideology on history writing will turn that history writing into an untruthful, factually incorrect account of the past. The RSS has a very strong view of Indian history, and that view of history is based on the idea that for some people in this country, India is not just their motherland, Matrubhumi or Pitrubhumi, but also their Punya Bhumi, which means the RSS is looking at the origin of a religion as the demarcating factor, indicator of citizenship of people today. Now, to that extent, I mean, this idea also, I can understand as an idea. I don't sympathize with it, but I understand that this is a view. All right, this is your view. Fine. Good luck for you. But the question is, this Punya Bhumi issue is used to bring together a very amorphous range of events, ideas, texts spread over a period of nearly 1500 years, 1500 years, and in a geographical spread from Kandahar, Afghanistan, to Banaras. At that time, there were no national boundaries. At that time, the idea that this is a nation with this map did not exist. And because the entire idea of trying to locate a basic text for the Hindu faith, or to name the exact origin, date of origin, or to talk about epics, which is wonderful literature, as a factual history, and therefore reincarnation or punarjanma or avatar as a scientific fact, brings in many questions which are very difficult to answer for people who espouse these ideas. When the idea of rebirth became in our ancient times the foundation for the caste system, our constitution has taken care of all those issues and told us that let there be scientific temper in the country. So, if such an ideology is injected in the writing of history, and if such history is taught to children by using the NCERT as the platform, then it is not unlikely that the children who grow up learning this alone as the completely true picture of the past might become imperfectly equipped to deal with the present.
Nowadays, the out of India theory is being treated as if it were on par with the mainstream theory, which says that Sanskrit came into the subcontinent from Central Asia as recently as 1500 BCE. So, if you add the new genetic evidence to the picture, is that the so-called Aryan migration theory, is that now almost an established fact, or is the debate still going on?
This debate is very old. It began in the 19th century following Sir William Jones's the idea that there were similarities between ancient Latin, ancient Greek, ancient Persian, ancient Sanskrit, and he proposed this Proto-Indo-European language. And in search of that, and in search of how such a language spread out everywhere, linguists labored for about 150 years. And they were not only British linguists, they were Russian linguists, the German linguists, French, they were Indian linguists, they were Persian linguists, they were from all parts of the world. Now, it is certainly a fact that a language family that had emerged some 5,000 years before our time spread, and we have presence of the old Indo-Aryan, a little earlier version of what we call the Sanskrit language. The one that is prior to that is Indic. Indic. That is slightly earlier version of this language. Now, the Indic branch of the Indo-European languages, the Iranian branch of Indo-European languages, and the European branch that is becoming Latin and Greek, all of this spread out. The spread out does not, linguistically, the spread out is known. But archaeologically, the evidences are fewer. Archaeologically, we do not have enough of archaeological excavations to show in which direction this language went out or came in. Therefore, such a debate was given an impetus, and the debate was whether it went out from here or it came in from outside. There are two methods of answering this question. One method is a language has its evolution very clearly seen in the way the vowels change, the consonants change over time. And the change consonants and change vowels are considered quite scientifically the later version. The unchanged are considered the earlier version. Now, if a later version is seen in one place, the later version is seen in Nagpur, and the earlier version is seen in Bombay, then you'll conclude that people went from Bombay to Nagpur. So, on the basis of that purely linguistic evidence, the proposition that came forward was that the Aryans moved from some part of north of India, not not immediate north, but the location, the determination of the location varies from all the way to Nordic countries to Eurasian steppes. It moved from there and came to India purely on the linguistic. The second evidence that people have gathered and is being applied is the habits of domestication of animals. So a horse was not an animal that existed in India, the kind of horse that we have. It came from the Eurasian steppes to India. And the language that the horse keeping people spoke was an earlier version of the Indic language. And therefore, the hypothesis that emerged was that those people brought with them a language variety which got accepted and it got stabilized and flourished, greatly flourished in South Asia or in India. There is now a third method of giving evidence, that is in genetics and study of genes helps us. Though this is a risky way of proving anything. So, based on the migration patterns, based on domestication of animals, based on study of seeds and agriculture, based on phonetics and linguistics, generally the conclusion is that this language spread from Eurasian steppes to India. Now, whether those people came in large hordes, in thousands or millions, or whether they trickled in, that is yet a field to be studied. So Sanskrit arrived from outside. It interacted with Dravidian, Pali, Prakrit, local indigenous languages, and that became an amalgam, making us a diverse society, a multilingual society, a tolerant society. And that's why India did not go out becoming an aggressor anytime. Our multilingualism is the root cause of our tolerance.
You have done a lot of work with Adivasis. Is it accurate to actually count the Adivasis as Hindus, or is their belief system completely lacking in most of the core elements of what we call Hinduism?
You see, when we look at trees, now supposing you have one idea of tree, a tree is tall, 30 feet tall, having 12 branches or 20 branches. And if other trees don't have 30 feet height and 12 branches or 18 branches, we do not call them trees. Similarly, in terms of faith, if a faith has a certain structure, a faith may have a theology, that means idea of God. A faith may have a bureaucracy, that means an idea of church. A faith may have clergy, that is a social class. A faith may have sacred texts, that is scriptures. But if there is another faith which has no scriptures but only clergy, no clergy and only bureaucracy, no bureaucracy but only idea of God, would you not call them religions? The census has to follow the Constitution of India, which says people of India have the fundamental freedom to worship and even to canvass, promote any religion. So if the indigenous people have their own idea of divinity, if they don't have scripture, they don't have temples or mosques or churches, it's all right. But it's a different idea of divinity. They named that idea of divinity in eastern part of India as Sarana. Elsewhere they have different names. So why do we put them under any other? Is it not an insulting term? They have their name. The census, how the census has machinery, equipment. Instead of, they have drop-down formats. Instead of 3 or 4 or 5, they can mention 15, 20 religions. When these people go to elections, if there are candidates from 30 parties, the election commission prints ballot paper with all 30 names, or does it say 1, 2, 3 and all others? So we should feel proud of our diversity and not be ashamed of diversity. Diversity allows the process of evolution to go forward, and therefore I stand for diversity. It is my fundamental belief, almost blind faith.